practicing NVC in Japanese is really, yeah.
Probably. And welcome everybody. It's Monday, January the 17th. Here in the United States, it's Martin Luther King Day. And it's already Tuesday, January 18th, where many of you are. And this is Jim Mansky, and I'm really glad to have you here at our open-hearted practice group, where today's lesson is on living interdependently.
This is Jory, and Jim and I will model living interdependently. You'll speak first, and then I spoke second. And I'm really glad to be hanging out with all of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
That might be modeling the patriarchy. I'm not sure, but we do the best we can to model and live interdependently. Yeah. So I'm really curious to see what we will all learn today. As I mentioned, the name of the class is Living Interdependently. And it actually is kind of part one of a two-part series, because next week we're doing honesty. So we'll kind of set the table for honesty as well today, and we'll probably move towards honest expression next week, unless there's some other change. And for those of you who are here for the first time, if anybody is, I'm really glad that you found us. And let me just explain a little bit about how we play together. We call this a practice group. So we focus on creating opportunities for you to practice the skills of nonviolent communication. And we will do that in three different ways, at least. One way is we'll practice what we call self-connection or self-empathy. And we'll do that. We'll start with that in just a moment. And then Jory's going to make small groups while we practice the self-connection exercise. And then you'll get a chance to go to small groups and practice the other two ways of nonviolent communication, which are honesty, that's the speaking part, and empathy, which is the listening part. Everything we do here is optional. So if you don't want to be in a small group for some reason, then you can do what a few people have done, which is put equal in front of your name. And I want to honor your choice to not be in small groups, and yet also encourage you to change your mind, at least especially for the second part of the day, when we go into groups for the second time, because that's where most of the learning will happen. You'll get a chance to really practice in the small groups. So we really encourage you to do that if you're willing. And if you're not, that's also perfectly fine.
If someone isn't sure how to put the equal sign in front of your name, feel free to send me a private chat. I'll be tracking the chat for just until we start doing the self-connection exercise. By then I'll be focused, and if you leave me a message, I'm not likely to see it.
Also, if you would like to practice in a language other than English, we can't always do that, but we do it when we can. So if we have more than one person that speaks, say, Japanese or Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever language, then put that in next to your name as well. And then when Jory's making the small groups, she'll try to arrange it so that you get to practice in your own language. So let's move into a self-connection exercise. I'm going to share my screen with you. Today is going to be a little bit different in terms of the self-connection exercise, because I'm not going to be saying anything other than I will read the quote that I put on the screen. And then we'll just have 5 minutes of contemplation of the quote. The quote relates to our skill today, which is living interdependently. And so the idea is that we just hang out with this quote. If you want to do some writing about what comes up for you about it, then that would be wonderful as well. But mostly it's just a chance to hang out and rest and be with these words. I'll share my screen with you. As I mentioned, today is Martin Luther King Day, a national holiday in the United States. It's our 36th time that we have celebrated Martin Luther King Day. So I'll read this quote from Martin Luther King from his letter from a Birmingham jail. I'll read it twice and then I'll be quiet. In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. So we'll start getting ready for our transition to small groups. Take this energy with you to your small group, where you'll have the opportunity to share with some new friends or maybe old friends what's alive in you in relationship to this quote or whatever else you'd like to talk about. And we'll do this for, there'll be groups of 3. So Jory will set the timer for 9 minutes plus 2. So that's a total of 11 minutes. And that just gives us time to readjust the room so that they're more or less equal. So everybody has a chance to have about 3 minutes. So you need to guard your own time so everybody gets a chance to share. You put equal.
Hey, Jim, can I talk to you later?
Later, yes, sure can. And so let's go ahead and go to small groups now, Jory.
Righty, here we go. If you came in late, just be patient. I'll put you in a room. Put it in the chat in a moment, Charles, as soon as everybody comes back.
Here they come.
Some information about that from the American.
Hey, welcome back. Yeah.
Okay.
So welcome back, and I think we're all back. I would love to hear from anyone, any feedback about what Jim shared.
And you can raise your hand by using your electronic hand. We can't see everybody. So on the bottom of your screen, there's something that says reactions. And if you click on reactions, a little menu opens up and there's a place where you can raise your hand like Rena did. Go ahead, Rena.
Hi, Rena.
Hi. Yeah, what I loved about the quote was the last line, that this interdependence is the structure of our reality. And, you know, sometimes like this, when I think of systemic change or structure, I feel very overwhelmed. And, you know, this helps me to trust more into the organic nature of structures. So that was very interesting. And also the fabric of our destiny. The Sufi poet Kabir also speaks about the fabric and you know, how we either it tears or it stains, and how empathy and mediation helps to, you know, bring it back to its essential nature. So I felt very grateful that in India, there is a daily reality which is based on interdependence. So lots of opportunities to practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. And we'll move to Guy.
Thank you, Jory. Thank you for the Martin Luther King reminder. I have a need, I realized listening to that, and thank you for reading it twice, Jim. I have a need for metaphor. And metaphor is tied to poetry and music. King always used metaphor, the fabric, the garment, the arc, and it's using another part of the brain, and I'm so thankful, and I need lots of metaphor. Thank you.
Thank you. Metaphor really speaks to you. Thank you for sharing.
You're like a sponge, Guy. You soak up metaphor.
And we'll go to Rob.
Yeah, hi. We started to talk about, somebody was talking about how they heard about a young child being shot by the police today, and how this interconnectedness, sort of kind of in a negative way most of the time with all the media that we see. And but it seems like we were getting maybe a somewhat of seeing everybody's needs with, well, what was happening with the policeman, let's say that shot, was his circumstances, or just trying to broaden what happened, but it seems like a huge hurdle to go over all the negativity of all the mass media.
Yeah, I catch mourning, Rob, about how this
Yeah,
interconnectivity can
yeah,
sometimes feed enemy images and so forth,
right,
as well as positivity. Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Emmy?
Yes, this also addressed this quote, my need for beauty. Beauty. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emily. I hope you're feeling better soon.
Thank you, Jory. That's very kind of you.
And Sarah Joy?
I really appreciated the quote, and it says so much. People have already mentioned some of it. And one of the members of my group said that one thing that she felt that it was saying was that there's consideration for all life. And I really think that summed up what I felt about it very, very well. So I thought I would share that.
Thank you. Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
My need for beauty is met yet again. And I want to read what Minako wrote. I began to believe that my existence and my birth as a human being had a meaning and a mission. If all existence is part of a reciprocal functioning, then I may just hold on to my intuition and surrender to it based on my mission. Thanks, Minako. Anybody else? Yeah,
Don, go ahead.
go ahead, Don.
Happy Martin Luther King Day, and this interdependency idea, I don't remember learning it on previous Martin Luther King days. It was a day off from my teaching in colleges. Anyway, I get TV from Vancouver, British Columbia, living on the border, and they had a lot about Martin Luther King on today, which I appreciate, in the fact that Martin Luther King has influence not just in the United States. And the idea or the metaphor was to think of your breakfast and look around what you're having and using and who made it, who transported it, as an example of the interdependency that Dr. Martin Luther King was conscious of and sharing with us. And it helps that idea, Jim, that you've talked about before about appreciation, appreciating the interdependency that we have and the things that we have and use that depend on so many other people to produce and transport and so forth. So thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King, for this coming to me today through what you did and some Canadian television. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Don. Yeah. Any other comments? There you go, Tanya.
One of the people in our group was talking about the reality of when I harm others, I harm myself. And for me, this is my metaphor, a two-bladed sword, right?
Yeah.
So I stab you, I stab me. Guy, there's a metaphor for you. Or a simile. And the other side of that, of course, is that when I heal, when I create a space for someone else to heal, then I'm healed. And I think we experience this in this group many times.
Thank you.
So that's
Yeah.
interdependent nature of reality.
Thank you.
There's a saying that's similar to that really stands out for me. When I am healed, I'm not healed alone. And I like turning it around, as you said, when you're healed, I'm healed. That's really sweet. Thank you. Yeah. Any other comments about this? Or if there's any kind of hanging chads, as we call them, or something hanging out from last week Any questions or comments about that?
Or celebrations about breakthroughs.
Yeah, beautiful.
If anybody's been practicing and noticed something different happen this week, that'd be fun to hear too.
And I noticed, Tanya, your hand is still up. Do you want it to stay up? Did you want to say more?
No, just forgetful.
I resemble that remark. Okay. And Sarah, no, you suddenly showed up right there, but I don't see your hand up.
Oh.
So
Anybody else?
I already
Here comes Rob. Go ahead, Rob. Oops, you're...
Yeah, I was thinking I might have COVID last session, and hey, I did. It came back positive. So, but I made it through it, and now I'm on the other side. Supposedly, I'm not supposed to be communicable. So, and it did need a lot of empathy, being in isolation and stuff. But I'm through it. So.
Well, I'm glad. I'm really glad that you made it through it, Rob,
hey,
safely.
yeah,
Thanks for letting
Yeah.
us know. You're I was at another meeting today of assessors, and one assessor from Germany didn't come to the meeting because she had just been diagnosed. Another assessor was there. She was still coughing and getting over her COVID. And another one was there and also was worried about waiting for a test. And so it just seems like it's intensifying. And so I just hope
Yeah.
everybody finds ways to stay safe as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Renee?
Yeah, hi. I did want to offer just some personal experience for those people who have had COVID. My husband's experience was that he had 3 full shots of the vaccination. He did get COVID in December, and we just had his antibodies tested, and they're 0. He has no antibodies. So you don't always get the antibodies. So you can get it, you don't have any protection. So always just wanted to share my experience. But I did have a question from last week, and that was that you posted an article on values from the New York Times, and I thought, oh, I'll be able to open that, and nope, I wasn't. And I think it might have been Tanya, and I did send you something about you. I think you might have put it on a Google Doc. Anyway, I'm trying to get access to the that article on values, and
I just emailed it to you, Renee.
Oh, thank you.
Immediate gratification. I love it.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right.
Ask and
Thanks,
ye shall
Sarah.
receive.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked.
Then you would be willing to share in the chat. I would love to have that too.
Yeah, great. Yes, if you would put the link in the chat, Tanya, that'd be wonderful. And
now we've got Emmy.
Yeah, I just feel really appreciative for Renee and Rob for speaking, and Jim about COVID, because I may have it, but I haven't been able to get a hold of a test yet. And tomorrow I'm getting tested. And so by you speaking of it, it just kind of softens it for me. I don't know, it kind of feels better having heard Rob speak and Renee and Jim and yeah, I don't feel so alone.
Right.
And I appreciate, I feel interconnected. Holy moly. That's what we're talking about.
A
But
sense of
yeah,
accompaniment.
I want to really let people know I do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. I see some hearts lighting up for you and smiles on people's faces as we all hold you and everyone here with care.
Yes.
Thanks
And
for
Beth
saying
wrote
that,
in the chat, the virus connects us. And it is a profound lesson in interconnectivity and interdependence, how this virus has and it kind of shines the light on also what Rob said, that it demonstrates how we're connected and we can share useful information, and it also can bring out sadly some jackals and cause some polarity And so every moment a chance to both celebrate our interdependence and mourn as well. Is that a fresh new hand, Rob, or is that an old hand?
Yeah, you know, it's really odd about the virus is that I got it. My 37-year-old daughter got it who lives here, but my significant other, Neva, she tested negative. She never got it.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's natural immunity some people have. Very interesting.
Yeah, or maybe they, who knows? It's really a mystery, you know, how these things happen.
Yeah.
It's really a mystery.
Well, I celebrate everybody who doesn't get it, and I celebrate all those who get it and can move on with their lives. So it's glad
And
for
that more
them.
knows that we've lost so many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything else before we move into the lesson for today? Like we need to do anything. We're already so experiencing interdependence here.
Mhm.
Okay, so I share my screen with you. Let me get the right screen up. Today's class again is on living interdependently. And as those of you who have been here before, you know we're moving our way through the Pathways to Liberation Matrix of Self-Assessment, which was written by Jake Gottwals, Jack Lehman, Jory, and me about 12 years ago now. We finished it. And it's a system of 28 different interrelated NVC skills that when practiced lead to a quality of consciousness of interdependence. So this is almost like in the middle of the matrix, and it's like now the matrix is, rather than being a whole bunch of almost independent skills, now we can really begin today to see how these skills really deeply interact in our life. And so each of the skills is set up as a pathway. And so first the definition, living from the knowledge that every individual is related to every other individual. Every part of a system affects every other part. And we all start with, because of the way we've been educated, as Marshall used to say, Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, because of the way we've been educated, we often have a sense of either independence or dependence that we live in. And that results in quality of thinking that's either or, like forced choice thinking and domination and submission, and just not even being aware that there are alternatives to that. Excuse me. And then we begin, maybe we learn something about NVC or mindfulness or some other path, and we become aware of that there's something called needs, and that there's something that maybe transcends submission and rebellion. And as we continue to grow, we grow in our capacity to consider not only our own needs, but the needs of others that might be impacted by our choices. And finally, we open up and we actually get curious about the perspectives and needs of others and see that we are all integrally connected. So we're going to practice today, starting with doing a little bit of writing. And the first, often we begin these NVC practices with what we call an observation. So think of a time when you asked for something that really mattered to you and you heard no. And then Jory and I are going to do a role play. First, we want you to have your own little observation. I put it in the chat. Think of a time when you asked someone for something that mattered to you and you heard no. So be quiet for a couple minutes while you connect to that.
அதை சாப்பிடு சாப்பிடு.
So just notice that this question awakens two of the skills that we've been working on since we started this series. One, presence. You need to really become present to your own experience in order to answer this question. It also awakens the skill of observing. So this is something that is built in deep in us, these two basic foundational skills on the matrix, presence and observing. So be quiet for about 30 more seconds while you finish any writing you need to do. Okay, so now, Jory, if you're ready, we'll do our little role play. And Jory and I are going to do a role play, and we're going to do it 3 different times and pause each time, and then get some feedback about what you noticed. And this actually is a true observation. It goes back to March of 2020. And those of you who you probably don't have too much trouble remembering what those early days of this pandemic were like. We didn't have vaccines. We didn't know what caused COVID, or we were just now starting to get clear. We didn't know how how the virus was transmitted yet. There were just so many unknowns. And so that's the state that I'm in. And as I hear Jory tell me that she wants to go and be with her sisters in Florida, about 4,000 miles away. And so I say to Jory, Jory, you know, I'm scared to death about you traveling right now. And it would be so meaningful for me if you would just pause until we know more about it. And so would you please be willing to stay home?
No way.
What do you mean, no way? Can't you tell this really matters to me? I'm scared to death. You're going to be putting not only you at risk, but me at risk.
So you can see that this kind of reaction did not build a whole lot of connection there.
Yeah. Did you notice, did anybody notice anything that contributed to connection? You'd really have to stretch if you did, but I
would say it's Emmy. When you were talking, she didn't interrupt you. And so that had some connection.
Yeah, I really appreciate your positivity and your willingness to find something that did contribute to connection. Anybody else got something?
Here's Chidi. I think Jim did phrase the request quite non-violence, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably better than I actually did it, because I've had 2 years to think about it and rehearse it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here comes take 2. So Jory, I see you're making plane reservations, and I'm kind of freaking out. You know, I mean, this COVID thing, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't want you to go to Florida and get stuck there. I might not see you for a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. Would you please be willing to stay home?
All right. So what did you notice in my response or in that dialogue together?
Kind of energy of submission.
Compromise.
Yeah, submission, compromise, giving up. Yeah.
It's Emmy. I didn't learn anything about you. You know, you were like invisible. I didn't learn what your needs and feelings were at all.
Wow.
At least you said you were freaked out. So something there.
Yeah, I was freaked out, but we don't know what was going on in Jory. We'd have to have pretty big giraffe ears, as we call it, to figure out what was behind that submission. Yeah.
It was neither a willing nor a joyful yes.
Yeah, there was not much of a sense of willingness nor joy. And what's your prediction of what might have been the effect on our relationship for that kind of behavior on Jory's part? I got what I wanted.
Not good.
No.
Resentment.
Yeah, it's a setup for resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. So perhaps she was a yes saying jackal.
Yeah, a yes saying jackal, right? Yeah, so we would both end up paying for me getting what I wanted if that's the energy that I received it with and that Jory gave it with.
I wonder how much sand was in your eggs the next morning.
Right. Yes.
So true. There's always a price that's paid. I mean, in terms of my experience already of submission, but it's likely he'll pay.
Yes. So just behind the close cousin of submission is violence. So there's a pretty high likelihood that Jory might withdraw her affection for me temporarily, maybe even permanently. Maybe it's the straw that broke the camel's back even, or maybe she'd put sand in my eggs or whatever. You know, there could be some kind of a violent reaction. And it also can lead to scorekeeping. So now in Jory's mind, since she's submitted to me, next time she asks me to do something, I have to say yes, or else I'll really get punished. So it sets up a whole scorekeeping, and now I owe her. She has an expectation that I'll say yes. Yeah. Is that a fresh hand, Rob, or an old hand?
Old hand.
Okay, great. All right. Any other comments about the submissive response? Okay. So raise your hand if you want to live in a world of domination and submission. Okay, good. I figured that'd be the case. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be in this class. So now role play number 3. Pretty much the same setup. I say to Jory, you know, I'm really concerned. You know, I see you're sitting there. I know there's really important reasons for you to go and so forth that you've expressed to me, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, why not be a little bit patient and see if we can learn more before you just reactively buy airplane tickets and leave tomorrow? Would you be willing to stay home?
Oh, that's such a challenging option for me. I really get that you would like me to stay home and you would feel safe. And at the same time, I just really feel such a strong need to accompany my sisters as they go through the losses that are happening for them right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so it sounds like you're really called to go. That you're so longing to support your sisters in their time of mourning right now. Did I get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like there's any way that you could say a joyful yes to my request.
At this point, it's so strong inside of me to to support them for whatever else is happening right now. Both of them have been married for over 50 years to these two men, and they're both passing now. So
Yeah.
how is that for you to hear?
Yeah. Well, I'm touched and sad about the loss too, and I just really wish there was another way. I wish we could think of another way. And we'll just dot here because we'll cover more about honesty next week. So what did you notice in that role play that might have contributed to connection? Yeah, Tanya.
A willingness to hear the other person, to be curious about what their needs were.
Yeah, and what was your clue that there was a willingness to hear the other person?
That's pretty much the statement.
Uh-huh.
Statement. I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Repeating back. You know, I mourn the loss of those two brothers-in-laws too.
Yeah, so a lot more statements of vulnerability. People have put in the chat. There was reflection, empathy, empathic listening, slowing things down, opportunity for consideration,
Curiosity.
Yeah,
empathy.
Maureen?
What I noticed is that the first dynamic that was different was that Joy responded very differently to you. Your approach was the same pretty much in all three presentations, in that you were asking for how it was, you were stating it how it was for you. She was able to be a little bit more open to listening as the three progressions, role plays happened, and not be reactionary. Like she was at the very beginning. And so her response was what changed my perspective.
Yeah, she really,
which then opened dialogue.
Yeah, she actually shared power in her reaction to me, in her response to me. The first time it was just a power battle. You know, we were fighting with each other. The second one, she gave all her power to me. And in the third one, she arrived fully empowered to hold on to her needs and yet care for mine. Maybe not meet my needs, but care for my needs, acknowledge my needs. Thank you for noticing that, Maureen. Margaret?
I thought you actually approached Jory a little bit more compassionately the last time, because you said something about, I understand your real desire to get with your sisters or to support them or something, whereas I hadn't heard that before. It was more how her going would affect you more. The first two times. I thought that's what I heard. Maybe I didn't hear it at the beginning, like I missed it. But to me, the last time, you were more inviting her to respond as opposed to just say yes or no to your request.
Yeah.
That was what I heard.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that probably doing the role play 2 times before, I started to soften and grow a little bit more empathy for what it might be like to be Jory. And so that was probably reflected in the way that I approached her the third time. It was totally unconscious, but I think you're absolutely right. Rob?
Yeah, I think you've got some of this on automatic, which is what I would hope for everybody. And Rob?
Yeah, I thought in the third way, though, that you had stated you had the request for her not to go, I believe. But I was expecting for you to say, how does this wash over what I'm saying? Or just to try to get on the same page before you put your request out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see the value of asking for feedback and
how's this getting the dialogue going, and then maybe, in fact, maybe Jim would be so convinced after hearing about remembering that both siblings are ready to pass away, maybe he would even change his mind a little bit or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I heard your side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. In the third role play, I was more connected to needs other than just my own. I was connected. I was depersonalizing the needs a little bit and universalizing them, and I think this Jory was doing the same thing. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Guy.
I heard it. I saw a progression of change in energy, and sadness has a kind of low energy to it. Was what I was noticing. Yeah, it started out very high energy, very charged. You know, the first one. And the other thing I was thinking, and I don't know if this plays off what Rob was saying, was, is there a difference between saying, would you consider not going, as opposed to would you consider staying here?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's an interesting thought. And I also want to highlight what Tanya put in the chat about if you don't want a yes or a no answer, don't ask a yes or no question. And that goes also to what Rob was saying, that my request could have been an open-ended request. How do you feel about not going? Or what comes up for you when you think about staying? And so forth, rather than would you be willing to go. See, what I did was I went straight to the action request. We'll talk more about this next week, but I went straight to the action request, saying what I at least I asked her what I did want, and so I made a little bit of progress, but I think there was a lot more connection that could have been built. Frankie.
I see the connection between not only two person, but two family, because it is interesting to me, particularly for Asian country, in Asian culture, we always consider my own family member is very important. But when you get married, we have more responsibility to take care other family member. It always have some pressure and struggle between them. But throughout your dialogue, when you discover both needs, and then the energy change from yes or no, or responsibility or submission, it changed to a connection of love. I see there is a change of love. Jim, in the role play, Jim understand the love of Joey with her family members. It is, wow, to me, it's very striking, very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that piece, because in the final role play, I didn't hear no anymore. I just heard what she was saying yes to. I heard the need behind the no. I heard what she was saying yes to, and that was really the thing that was shifting in me. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to your practice now. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Jory, before we move into the rest of their practice? No. Okay. So here's where we started. Let's think of a time when you asked someone for something that mattered to you and you heard no. And that, again, was awakening your skills of presence and observing when you were practicing. So then now notice how you reacted in your own experience and describe how you reacted. I'll be quiet for a minute or so while you describe your reaction. Although I phrased it as something that you might have reacted to in the past, you might also even notice the reaction now. So you can tune into any reaction that remains in you. It still might sting for you even right now that you heard and know. And so you can also pay attention to that. And so there's 3 ways that you can do that. You can notice and name your thoughts. You can notice and name your sensations, and you can notice and name your emotions. But just start with thoughts. And if you had any kind of that, what we nickname jackal or life alienated thinking, like you heard in Jory's very first reaction and my very first reaction, with lots of blame and judgment, that's okay. Just notice that and write it down. Marshall Rosenberg called that enjoying the jackal show. So I'll just be quiet for a minute or two while you just notice and name the thoughts that you're reactive thinking. About 30 more seconds for this step. So one thing to highlight about this reactive patterns is that sometimes the reactive pattern might be expressed, like I did in the first role play. I let my jackals fly. And in real life, I hardly ever do that because I'm a little guy and I don't want people to beat me up. If people knew these jackal thoughts, I'd be setting myself up perhaps for violence, to be on the receiving end of violence. So I learned at a young age to keep all that stuff inside. And so whether I express that jackal or keep it inside, that's another thing to notice as part of the process. And so now let's look at how we could go to how we could shift to that third kind of a response. So in a way, we're moving from reaction, which is instantaneous. It's like our nervous system takes in a stimuli. There's a stimulus, and there's no time. We immediately react, and then maybe we pay the price later. And so now we're going to imagine that we can kind of dilate time a little bit and move into an opportunity for self-connection so that we can be more choiceful about our response. Those of you who were last week remember that we were working on cultivating some choice in how we respond. So the first strategy that we'll play with is self-empathy. And so notice first, after you reflect on that jackal show, tune into the feelings that are alive in you. especially noticing sensations in your body. In that moment when you first heard no, what sensations do you have in your body? You may also notice emotions. Maybe you feel angry or hurt or sad or frustrated or an emotion. So again, first notice it and then name it. And then the third part of self-empathy is just to allow yourself to have that experience. You have thoughts, you have sensations, you have emotions, you name them for yourself, then you allow them to be. In other words, you make it okay to be a human being. Human beings do react to some stimuli. We do have painful thoughts, painful sensations, and painful emotions. You just allow yourself to be human. So now you're seeing how some of the skills we've been working on are all coming together to support a quality of consciousness. When you're noticing, you're awakening these skills of presence and observing, and you're allowing yourself to tune into feelings, awareness, sensations, and emotions. You're making it okay to have these thoughts, sensations, and emotions that cultivates self-acceptance. So this is all an inside job, self-empathy. This gives us then the opportunity to shift our attention to empathy. So get curious. The other person said no to you, at least you heard no. What do you imagine was alive in the other person? What do you imagine when they said no? What do you think, what do you sense they were feeling in their body? So when Jory was letting me know what was going on in her, even in the first role play, I could sense that she was really determined and focused, and she had strong feelings of love alive in her for her sisters, and a quality of care and compassion that I'm guessing was alive in her. I don't really know. I'd have to ask her. But my empathy is in the guessing about what was going on in her. I could ask her, and then I could get more of a sense of connection. But the first step of self-empathy is getting curious and wondering what's going on in this other person? What's motivating them to say no? So some of us are newer in the group than others, so I'll just put a needs chart up for just a minute for you to look at. Might help you get connected to what's going on in this other person. So what helps me to start moving into empathy is to begin to connect with what I imagine it's like, what kind of sensations might be going on in the other person, what emotions might be going on in them. So it's like I take that same skill I have with self-empathy, only now I wonder what's going on in Jory when she says no. I might get some clues by looking at her body if I happen to be with her. I can get clues from voice tone, volume, pace, and so forth, about what might be going on in her. And then once I get connected to the sensations and emotions, then that can give me some guesses, help me to make some guesses about what her needs might be. So first you sense feelings, and then you connect to needs. And then all this is happening on the inside, just inside your own experience. You haven't even opened your mouth yet. But if you sense that it would contribute to connection, you might want to make a needs guess. You might want to say to the other person, are you really needing to go support your sisters right now? You're really having a compassionate response, and you can't imagine them going through this by themselves. You really want to support them. So how could you put it in your own words to acknowledge the needs that were alive in them in a way that might support connection? So Jory, if you could reset the timer for 13 minutes. And we're gonna invite you to go back to small groups where you can chat with friends about this, maybe get some support, some ideas. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just an exploration. So this is a chance to just live interdependently in a small community of people with a common aim of supporting each other and listening for the need behind the no. So everybody have about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll come back here in about 15 minutes.
I have the timer.
Wanting to proceed with the ego.
Welcome back.
Right in the middle of your sentence, no doubt.
I know.
Zoom is so
You went public there for a moment. So I'd love to hear from people what your takeaway is here from having gone through that experience.
Yeah, you can either raise
And
your...
of course, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask those as well. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Jory. Very helpful for me. One of my group members asked me a question. Did I ever share with my friend all of this stuff that came out of me feeling rejected? And I never have. And it was like, oh my God, how did I miss that one? So
yeah.
It worked for me. Thank you.
Yeah, wake up call. You actually have a choice. You never even thought of that you had. Thank you. I see Tanya has her pet on her lap too, just like me. I can't tell if that's a cat or a dog or what that is.
It's a doggy.
I
It's a doggy.
see.
So 1-year-old doggy.
Uh-huh.
So here a question that came up in my group. What happens when you guess the needs of the other person and they just don't seem as valid as your need? So this was a situation where someone was called to an in-person meeting and they felt that there were life and death considerations because of COVID. And so it really didn't matter to them that the other person had needs for power in their world and effectiveness and all this other stuff. So I was wondering if you want
it sounds
take
like
that one.
Yeah, it sounds like that person wanted something back, and I wonder if there was a really clear request of what it was that was wanted. I don't know.
Yeah, they said, can we have this meeting online because I'm worried about people catching COVID? And the person said, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what she said was, I could list their needs, but I really don't value them as much as my need for safety. And since it's life and death.
So that's always a bit of a setup. It's a choice whether you really want to connect. And if you really want to connect, then you connect to the other person. If you connect to the other person first, it's more likely they'll connect to you. But there's no guarantee. We haven't managed to get to the point where there's enough compassion and nonviolent communication in the world that we all are going to meet each other in the way we would like.
Yeah. The other thing that makes me, that I wonder about is sometimes I have the belief that if I just express my needs, then I'll get what I want. And so then NVC can become kind of a tool of manipulation, that I just have to kind of share my needs and maybe cry a little bit or whatever, and then you'll shift and then I'll get what I want. And then that's actually another expression of submission and domination. So that's a little scary for me when I see myself doing that. And
it didn't work when we were 2 years old either. We tried that even then.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that that I was thinking about in relationship to this issue is that empathy is different than agreement. So I can understand another person's needs. Like, let's say it's Utah and you really want us to meet in person, and I really catch your need that maybe it's about efficiency or connection or whatever, whatever I am. You might even confirm what your needs are, and I get really
Our business trip to Hawaii, yeah.
Yeah, business trip to Hawaii, because maybe it's about fun and supporting the local tourist economy or whatever. And I can get totally connected to those needs and still disagree with the strategy. So I want to keep that distinction clear, that needs answer the question, why do we do what we do? And strategies answer the question, how are we going to get those needs met? So they actually address two separate issues. And if there's still conflict going on, a couple things might mean there's just more need for empathy and connection and taking our time until we find something that works for everybody. Or maybe we revert to some other strategy like domination or submission, and then we'll learn our lesson and maybe have another chance to try it another time. So that's
in this particular situation that Jim and I played out, that was a real situation where he really wanted me to stay home. He was very, very worried for my health and wanting to be very protective. And, if he had the magic wand, that's what would happen, but it wasn't the choice I was willing to make. And it's a tough one sometimes, where I made a choice because I saw my sisters suffering, both losing their husbands within 2 weeks. I know there's a pandemic. I couldn't have lived with myself not to have gone there and been with them, even though I knew it was really hard on Jim. It wasn't what he wanted. But at some point, there's a sense of self-integrity. I'm not doing this to hurt you. It's just I can't give you what you want right now.
And so Jory gets really clear on what her needs are, and she's actually willing to get them met. And this is just a guess about what might have been going on in her. She was trusting that I had the capacity to mourn. That when we don't get what we want, there's another skill on down the matrix as we keep going, or maybe we've already done it, I can't quite remember. Mourning is how we handle loss. And so while she was gone, I did a lot of self-empathy. I got a lot of empathy from a lot of people. And when I saw her again, I was really glad to see her. And I was still a little mad. We needed to connect when she got home. It wasn't over. We still had some deep connection to do about it. So then we did the repair.
And the key piece that Jim kept saying was safety, and I understood that. And when I got home, I quarantined for 14 days. I was did everything I could to be safe while I was gone. And there are just sometimes that we can't give the person what they want, but we can still do whatever we can to support them in getting their needs met. And with that, I see Rob.
Yeah, that kind of stimulated something in me because I remember when I was in couples therapy with my wife, and I had all these needs of, helping to, help support the household monetarily. And she said she had a need to be heard, and I just dismissed it. And I couldn't even, that didn't even seem like an important enough need at the time to have of any value. And it took me years to kind of see that is a lot of times people are just wanting to be present with what they're saying and to be heard. And yeah, it took me a long time to get that one.
Yeah, and I think at the heart of it often is how much we have a need to matter. When we're willing to listen to the other person, we can at least let them know that they do matter. Yeah, thank you, Rob. And Maureen?
A couple of things. I realized that depending on the severity or the depth of the issue, and the one that I shared is kind of long-standing. So allowing enough time, because it doesn't get all shared, or the back and forth that's needed for getting where we want to be can't be rushed. And I attempted to broach a kind of a big topic in too short of a time. So that was not a good approach. So that's one thing, so measuring out how complicated the matter is. And that I like the conversation that you and Jim were just having, I thought was really important, because the need was, his strategy was he didn't want you to go. That's not a need. The need was safety, or at least from my understanding. And so as you went and then came back, you were doing, safety was on your radar to try to meet that need. Your choice of going, that strategy didn't meet the need, but it wasn't as if the needs got thrown out the window and you disregarded safety. So we can disagree on the strategies, but it seemed like you did come together, at least on some level, for the need of safety.
Yep, you're absolutely right. In fact, that is a conversation that we had before she left, and several times while she was gone. She was gone a couple of weeks, I think, twice she went, and we talked about strategies to try to meet those needs. So we got good masks. We tried to learn as much as we could about what was known at the time to keep people safe. And I think we ponied up for a first-class ticket to try to create more social distancing. The airlines at the time were cooperative in that they were doing social distancing on the flights and so forth. So we did the best we could to navigate the needs and find new strategies to accommodate those needs. And I really liked your point about sometimes these conversations take time, and it might take more than one session. One of the big pieces of advice I remember hearing from Marshall was take your time with these things. What's the rush? What's more important, getting a decision or getting connection? And so figuring out strategies to create the time and the connection can be really, really important. And although Jory and I didn't need it in this particular case, it's also within the realm of possibility that we would call a mediator or call a friend to give us the empathic support that we needed or to help mediate our conflict. So that's another option to keep in the bucket, is to get help when you need help. Okay. Anything else up for anybody about living interdependently?
Jim, may I ask a question?
Please, go ahead.
Sure.
Could you please talk some more, you and Jory, about how do you know when you're manipulating and dominating? What are the signs?
Yeah, so I can tell when I'm manipulating because I'm attached to a strategy and I am not particularly attached to the other person's needs. In terms of whether someone else is manipulating, I'm cautious about having that kind of label on someone else because it has some impact on me in terms of my sense of separation from them. And so for me, I do the best I can to see the other person's humanity and to connect to what the underlying needs are rather than focus on the strategy or label it. How's that for you to hear? Maybe
That's
you
very
didn't hear
helpful.
me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Juliana?
Yeah. So in my case, what really helped in connection after hearing the no was, really after giving myself self-empathy for a few days, finding the right moment to honestly express to this person, because I really cared about the relation, the connection and the relation, honestly express my pain, my sadness, my feeling, kind of notice that, okay, for me, it was I needed in that moment. I did not self-care. I needed care from her. This was my daughter, and she needed self-care for herself. So I could understand that, and but talking about it. So honest expression really, and she realized my pain, and that I felt really healed and whole, and able to connect again, and really free after expressing, and so holding it inside. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then I see Emmy, Emmy.
Emmy.
Still have Emmy. Yeah.
I'm kind of, as we're trying to live interdependently or interconnected, and this thing of mattering, that we all matter. But sometimes when a no comes up, that feeling that you don't matter becomes alive. And it gets correlated. It's what you were speaking of, Jory, and how to disconnect that from the no. And I'm curious about how you might do that.
Well, yeah. Two things come up for me around that. First of all, that our difficulty in hearing no is something that we can recognize inside of ourselves, and just to understand that we all want to protect ourselves and to try and create a different relationship, at least to have some understanding that our reaction is ours, and there are certainly times that we say no. And the second part of your question was?
I guess it's not so much a question, but it's just an observation that I have. Do you know about, because you brought up people want to matter, all human beings want to matter. And so when you have different things going on, it's just, I don't know, I'm not verbalizing this well, but to get that harmony, to get the harmony that you matter and I matter and everyone here matters, and how we can all dance together, you know, within the no's and yeses of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the world I want to live in. That's the world I hope we live in. And the truth of the matter, so to speak, is that whether other people think we do or not, or even whether we think we do or not, the truth of the matter is we matter. It's all the things we're adding to it, and all the very young parts often that we have from our own childhood, the traumas and the missing opportunities to really have the quality of connection that we're talking about here. So we all have like still some wounds in us, and we call them traumas sometimes, but they're there. And so recognizing them makes, as far as I can tell, the biggest difference in the world, to be able to name it for what it is rather than fall victim to it and go down what I call the rabbit hole of that consciousness of poor me, or, you know, there's not enough, or whatever it is. Ayako?
Hi, I'm just wondering, I think I need some level of self-esteem to say no, or to accept no. And what do you think about the self-esteem? I kind of wonder, self-esteem is not a word in NVC. I don't hardly heard about the word.
It's definitely a word in English. And what it means to me is that my self-esteem is that I matter, that I am a whole human being worthy of getting my needs met. And so I think that's pretty universal. And if we go to whether we matter into this, as I talked about just before, about this rabbit hole that, you know, it has to look a certain way, or, you know, I'm not good enough, or they're not good enough, then we're getting lost. The real truth of the matter is we matter. And when we remember that, we have so much more capacity to deal with what life is offering us.
And for me, self-esteem is kind of a tricky word because it can be used in lots of different ways. Do you mean approving of yourself versus disapproving of yourself, or, you know, so just to get clear on what you mean. So we often just use the word, someone asked in the chat about self-acceptance, and how, and so that's usually the terminology that we use, is to focus on self-acceptance, and then self-compassion. And for me, self-acceptance is just allowing myself to be a human being, to that I've suffered from trauma, and that other people suffer from trauma, that everybody's just like me, that I have needs and you have needs, and to make it okay to have needs. I need food, I need air, I need water, and when I open my heart to the fact that human beings have needs, then that supports self-compassion. I want to help myself to get those needs met, and then I stick with my my self-compassion until I find some strategies that can support my vitality or my aliveness. So I think we'll be digging into this even more next week when we talk more about honesty. Because why would we be honest if we don't care about ourselves? Why would we speak up for our needs? So we'll start navigating that a little bit more next week, I think.
And we have 2 more hands up, and maybe we could quickly go through those.
Yep. Sudha, love to hear your voice.
Yeah, I struggled whether I should raise my hand or not, and then I decided yes, go for it. Mattering. So my
comment is actually a request to Minako, because she posted something shared something on the chat, which I found, I have a sense that it is deep and I would like more clarity. And I did not get what she said. So it's a request to Minako to be able to say a little more about what she said, especially about when there's no structural awareness and
I wonder if it would work for you, for me to put you and Minako in a breakout at the end, and you can talk about that since we're running out of time. Would that work for you?
Yeah, it would, if it works for Minako.
Minako?
It could be a challenge since Minako doesn't speak English, but she's very good with the chat and the translation, so you guys can figure something out.
Okay. Minako and Asuda.
Yeah, and
I could try to help if you can put me in the breakout room together.
Okay, Fumiko, great.
Yeah.
So Fumiko, Minako, and Suda. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see your hand, Rob, and I want to get to it, but I just want to say what I usually say at the end of each of these classes, that I think we did a class already on self-acceptance in the last few weeks, and it would be on this website here where the recordings are. You might get some hints and some ideas there, and you can review all the classes that we've done in this series so far, along with 29 other 1-hour sessions with other trainers from around the world that are also on that website. So it's not just Jim and Jory, you can get some variety of voices. And we do all of these classes in the spirit of compassionate giving and receiving, or the gift economy would be another way that you could look at it. We're doing fundraising for the Center for Nonviolent Communication, and we're happy to be the conduit for those gifts, or you can make them directly to CNBC at the link there in the middle. And CNBC is the organization that stands for the Center for Nonviolent Communication. It's the organization that was started by Marshall Rosenberg in 1985 to support his mission of sharing nonviolent communication around the world. And finally, love it if you would buy my book and buy a couple copies and give them away to people. And this particular website is a list of places that offer books with free international shipping. But you can buy it or order it from any local bookstore or online in other places like Amazon and so forth. It's called Pathways to Nonviolent Communication. And thank you all for being with us. And I think I want to hear Rob's question, if you're still here, Rob, and then I'll turn the recording off after their question. Then we'll make small groups for people.
Yeah, I remember working with John Kenyon, an MVC trainer, and he took me to this place of esteem just in itself. And it was such a beautiful kind of full experience of everything having value, everything having esteem. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I love that, considering just the word esteem. All right, so I'm going to turn let's all say goodbye to each other, and then I'll turn the recording off. So aloha, everybody. Thanks for being here. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Aloha. Au revoir.
If you want to
Buenas
stay and be
noches.
in breakout,
Bye.
if you want to stay